Welcome back. So the Police Ministry is today expected to release the crime statistics for the second quarter of the 2024-2025 financial year. This will cover the number of criminal cases registered nationwide between July as well as September. Researcher from the Institute for Security Studies, Willem Els, joins us now ahead of the announcement later this afternoon. Willem, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. So as the Minister will be releasing the stats later on today, what should we as citizens be looking out for to determine whether or not we are making progress or not? And also thinking about this, that initially there was the annual crime statistics that were released. That was changed, of course, to now release the stats quarterly. But what change has that really brought?
Good morning to you. Yes, since we've got the new minister and also handed over more of the powers to the National Commissioner, we see that there's a new dynamics within the police. We saw the minister came up with a new priorities. He's more hands-on the policy levels. We allowed the National Commissioner to be more active in taking control of the operational side of the police. And I think we will see that reflecting in the latest crime stat, because this will be the first quarterly release after the minister really managed to find his feet, and also where the National Commissioner took more control. So what we are expecting is, of course, that there will still be some deterioration in some of the areas, but we also detected that there's a more hands-on approach, especially in provinces like the KZN. We saw the operations in the Eastern Cape that we expect might produce some better statistics, but we will have to wait and see.
Yeah, speaking about that relationship between the minister as well as the National Police Commissioner, I remember when we were in Mpumalanga with those Libyan nationals who were found being trained on a security farm. And during the impromptu press briefing, one of the questions that were asked were very operational around SAPS. And what the minister did there was that, I don't want to speak on operational matters. I'd allow the police commissioner and leave the police commissioner to deal with that. What does that tell us about the understanding of Senzo Mchunu when it comes to policing and his role as the minister, but also the role of the police commissioner as the head of police?
Yeah, well, in the first place, we see that the minister seems to understand the divide between and the separation of powers between the political head and the operational head of the police, and that is a good thing, because in recent years we saw that those lines were blurred, and that led also to a lot of confusion, but also, I believe, to the deterioration in the crime stats. So we see that the minister is more on a strategic level. The minister is focusing on guidance, but also on a policy level, and it takes time to establish or re-establish those things. But we saw that behind the scenes that there are various efforts online where the minister also made known his strategies, his fields of focus, and his priorities. And those seem to have pushed the right buttons. We also saw that the National Commissioner and, of course, his team started to take control. We saw in KwaZulu-Natal, even in Mpumalanga, and as I mentioned, in the Eastern Cape, the operational side of the police tended to come up with their operational plans that are more focused, that are more organized. And so we expect that might be reflected in the latest statistics.
Yeah, and I have to say also, when you look at Operation Valumkoti, remember that press briefing, the post-cabinet press briefing, where the minister in the presidency was saying that we will absolutely not be assisting those illegal miners. We didn't send them down there. And there was somewhat of a shift when Senzo Mchunu had his press briefing. What does this then do to police officers themselves and their own understanding of what their duties are? Because there's also this question around the capacity of the police.
Yeah. In the first place, if you're an operational police officer, you would like to be led by a political side of it that speaks with one voice, but also that reinforce confidence that they have a clear direction in where they are going. That will remove a lot of uncertainty, but it also create guidance to the operational police in order for them to operate. We saw that there were unfortunate statements, but we saw that since the minister came on board, there was direction. He is leading from behind in terms of the operational side, but also guiding the operational police to do what they need to do. So that is a situation that is still unfolding. But we also saw that in your rolling out of Operation Chanela, that is beyond Gauteng. We saw the successes there. So there's a new breeze when it comes to the visibility of police in the majority of South Africa.
Yeah. During the appearance of some of the crime-fighting institutions, including the NPA as well as the Hawks, before Scopa last week, the point that was raised by Shamila Batoy was that we cannot prosecute our way out of corruption. And when it comes to crime, I wonder if the same applies as well, that you can't prosecute your way out of crime. Considering what the former Minister of Police had said before. And this is that because of the socio-economic conditions that most South Africans find themselves under, unfortunately, it does lead to crime. And sometimes also the nature of that crime that becomes very violent in its nature. But then what should the approach be? Because the police can't necessarily be expected to also be policing socio-economic conditions.
Exactly. You know, when it comes to crime prevention, there's a model that was developed here in South Africa. One of the scholars here, it is referred to when it comes to crime prevention as the impossible mandate that has been handed to police, because the police they are mandated to combat and to prevent crime, but at the end of the day, they do not have control over all the drivers of these crimes. So what that approach then actually promotes is that there must be a holistic approach where all the different role players that can contribute towards addressing the drivers of this crime should come together, and they should develop a joint strategy that is holistic in nature, with the police, of course, advising and guiding, but a joint approach and a joint accountability of all these different departments in order to address the situation. As you mentioned, the socioeconomic drivers, it is beyond the control of the police.
Yeah, and just finally, again, during that briefing as well, the Hawks' General Libya raising the issue about losing professional, skilled investigators, especially forensic investigators, which is something that has been mentioned before, and losing them specifically to the private sector. But Shamila Batoy had indicated that sometimes also losing some of their investigators to the SIU. From the criminal cluster, do you think that there's an approach around how this can be dealt with? But how do you ensure that the state itself doesn't lose all of that knowledge? So you don't have a brain drain in the state because the state can't afford to pay market-related salaries.
Yeah, you know, that point is a very important point, because for many years the police they actually got a committee together to look at scarce skills retention and a strategy on how to retain the scarce skills within the police. And that runs through from your forensics to your specialized units to your investigators, specialized investigators, and all the way up. And that is a real challenge for the police. One of the biggest challenges that you have, and that they hit a brick wall again, is that, you know, the police, they are on the similar payroll. They do not have, and that was also mentioned by Ms. Batoy, is that they cannot increase the salaries for scarce skilled people. They cannot increase allowances that is actually added to their salaries, etc., etc. So at the end of the day, they are competing. You know, an ambulanceman that is doing a very great job, he is on the same level as a police officer at the forensic science unit that's doing a completely different scarce skilled job. And that, you know, you cannot keep on comparing apples with pears. We have to look at a new dimension in how we retain our scarce skills and our scarce skills within the police, but also in the security cluster.
Willem, thank you so much for your time. That is Willem Els, who is from the Institute of Security Studies.